Supreme Court of Ohio. We have had 4 wonderful events in the past, including our first presentation by Justice Duncan, and then we celebrated the Tuskegee Airmen at our second event, and of course their portraits are located here in the back of our room. Justice McGee Brown was our third participant a few years ago, and then last year we had Ron Anderson, the artist who completed the artwork in the History of Law Gallery in our library. At this time, I'd like to recognize the justices for being here today with us. Justice O'Neill, Justice Lansinger, Justice French, Justice Kennedy, Justice O'Donnell, I see in the back over there as well, and you'll hear from the Chief Justice in just a few moments. Our committee has done great work, and the Chief will specifically introduce them by name in a moment. I have been asked for all of you to not only to turn the sound down on your phones, but to turn off your phones, because we were getting some interference for over the loudspeakers. So if you could power down your phones, that would be terrific. Our first presenter today is McKenna Sinclair Hensley. She is the 2013 Martin Luther King Jr. Oratorical Contest winner, Junior Division winner. She is here today with her parents. Her parents are seated over here at the table, and we'd like to welcome them, Yvette Jackson and Dr. Mark Hensley. And I have a little biographical sketch on McKenna. She is a 7th grader at Ames Impact Middle School. Her favorite subjects are science and literature. In her spare time, she likes to run track, sing, and participate in gymnastics. And McKenna would like to be a lawyer focusing on intellectual property. McKenna?
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is McKenna Hensley. I'm a 12-year-old 7th grader, and I currently attend Arts Impact Middle School. The topic of my oration is Preacher's Kid. I am a preacher's kid. Think about that for a minute. What does it mean to be a preacher's kid? Many people automatically think stereotypes, like we will always have religious viewpoints over preachers to be. Or like in the movies where perfect kids gone wrong. Any of those ring a bell? Think about it. Poet Denise Campbell put it this way: they're often given a bad name, with people saying they're the worst kind. And many have been known to earn the reputation they've been assigned. It seems like preachers' kids are supposed to live above other kids' level. And too often people assume that preachers' kids are of the devil. But all Christians should raise their children to be different from the world's crowd. If all Christians did their part, preachers' kids wouldn't be so singled out. A child of a preacher has high standards expected of them to meet. But they shouldn't be the only ones. We should all follow in Jesus' feet. Dr. King definitely followed in Jesus' footsteps. Why? Because he was a preacher's kid. Not only was he a preacher's kid, but he was a preacher's grandkid. In fact, he was a 3rd-generation preacher. Preaching just ran in the family. Dr. King did not just convey his enthusiasm for fairness and justice by simply stating facts that came to him. He studied other great men from different countries. He developed a cadence in his speeches that were rhythmic. He studied the Bible and made it come alive, and it was relevant to the situation at hand. His core beliefs were power and peace, and out of those came, in his words, the love ethic. And that's what preachers are supposed to do. How did Dr. King stay awake during the Civil Rights Revolution? Dr. King graduated from college and received a doctorate of philosophy. The definition of philosophy is the most basic beliefs, concepts, and attitudes of an individual or group. Dr. King actually impacted people's lives and decisions through the way he spoke. He understood different people's beliefs, their general ideas, and how they acted when it came to these beliefs. It helped that he was a preacher's kid. He listened to outstanding speakers all his life. He developed exemplary speaking skills at a young age. He had many advantages because he was a preacher and a preacher's child. Poet John Donne once said, "No man is an island inside of itself. Every man is a piece of a continent, a part of the main. And man's death diminishes me because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never since to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee." In response to Donne, King stated, "By believing this, by living out this fact, we will be able to remain awake through a great revolution." That's what we need to do. Work together as one. Mourn the deaths of fellow human beings. Contribute to the revolutions going on in this world. Fight in the revolution. This doesn't mean we must overthrow our leaders. Show our support. Revolutionaries need great speaking skills. They need tremendous discipline and authority. Preachers' kids almost always have these qualities. We could be the leaders of the pack, but it's not just us. If all people raise their children right, preachers' kids wouldn't be the only ones. We could all follow in Jesus' feet, and in Martin's. By believing these facts and staying involved in all situations that affect us, preachers' kids, and all the rest of God's children will remain awake through a great revolution. Thank you.
Thank you, McKenna. I think you would be wasting your talents in intellectual property instead of appellate advocacy or trial advocacy. Nicely done. Thank you. We also have a special performance today by Maya Gordon. Maya is a fifth-year senior at the Charles School at Ohio Dominican University. In May, she will receive her high school diploma and associate's degree in business. Her parents are Diane and Gary Gordon. Diane, her mother, is here today. Thank you for being with us. Maya is a member of Chason West Africa Dance Company and Theater Street Dance Academy. Maya would like to study abroad in West Africa. Dance is her passion. In the future, she plans on owning her own dance studio. Today, Maya is accompanied by Chason West African Dance Company members Kevin Seals and Devin Howard. Thank you. Thank you, Maya. Very well done. Okay, we're getting ready to introduce our featured speaker, but before I do that, I wanted to take a moment to point out to all of you the recent edition of Court News Ohio, actually Court News Review. Court News Ohio is, of course, our new news system here at the court, if you will, and the cover story on Court News Ohio Review is on the Emancipation Proclamation. This year, of course, is the 150th anniversary of the signing of that great document. I recommend it to you for your reading, and congratulations to our Office of Public Information for a nicely done article. Now I'd like to introduce Chief Justice O'Connor to introduce our featured speaker.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thanks for emceeing here. I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted after watching that. McKenna, I don't know. I fully agree that you've got an appellate career or a litigation career ahead of you. And Janet, I'd hate to be following her. That's just all I have to tell you. So, good afternoon. And before I introduce our guest speaker, who literally needs no introduction, I have one more round of applause, I think, for our oratorical contest winner and our guest performer. I was just blown away at the quality of our... Each year we get better and better at this, and I think that the entertainment and the talent that has been exhibited here is just absolutely phenomenal. I'd also like to recognize the individuals from our staff that put this event together: Mindy Wells, Janet Green-Marbley, Melissa, Pierre Lewis, and Jerry Allen for their efforts in planning this event. Ladies, would you please stand? 37 years ago, Gerald Ford issued the first official presidential message marking Black History Month. During the country's bicentennial year, he cited the, quote, impressive contributions of Black Americans to our national life and culture. In that message, President Ford also recognized the efforts of historian Carter G. Woodson, who created a week 50 years earlier to honor African Americans and their contributions to the history and society of the United States. With that historical perspective in mind, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest of honor, our keynote speaker, United Way of Central Ohio President and CEO Janet E. Jackson. Janet joined the United Way in January 2003, becoming the first woman and the first African American to steer the organization. In '97, she was the first woman appointed Columbus City Attorney, and later that year became the first African American elected to the office. She also was the first African-American woman to serve as a Franklin County judge from 1987 until 1997. In 2001, needless to say, she was inducted into the Ohio Women's Hall of Fame. Janet's goal to help people achieve the building blocks of a good life, the quality education that leads to a productive career, income that can support a family through retirement, good health, and a safe place to live is her goal. She is also a well-known advocate for diversity and inclusion. Janet has devoted her life to service and believes it should be at the center of everyone's personal life. Please join me in welcoming Janet E. Jackson.
Good afternoon. I'm a Southerner. I'm sorry. You can do better than that. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, Chief Justice O'Connor, for that introduction. To members of this honorable court, Justices Lansinger, Kennedy, O'Donnell, O'Neill, and French, thank you for joining us here today. And I also want to say thank you to the staff members who coordinated today's wonderful event. I don't believe I've met Mindy, Melissa, Pierre Louis, and Jerry Allen, and to my dear, dear, dear friend of so many years, Janet Green-Marbley. Just yesterday, I was having a conversation with my executive assistant. It seems that at the end of the year, she had stopped scheduling monthly, 6 weeks to 2 months meetings with Janet, and I said, you have to understand, if you want me to maintain my sanity, then I need to meet with Janet and another dear friend that many of you know, Helen Linus. And so, Janet, thank you for reaching out to me specifically and inviting me today. And to both Maya and McKenna. Thank you. Off my notes, which I typically do. Some of you may know that I serve on the Mayor and City Council President Ginther's Education Commission. And we have a huge task before us to look at the issues that are impacting our children in the Columbus City School District. I personally think that if we could just replicate whatever is going on in the lives of both McKenna and Maya, we would get it right. And a part of that includes parental involvement. And so thank you again to the parents for being here today. I am truly honored to speak to you during your celebration of Black History Month. On Martin Luther King Day, just 2 weeks ago, I spoke to a group of community leaders in Westerville. And one of the things I told them about the legacy of Dr. King is that he and his supporters were key architects of the society we live in today. Their determined efforts to create an America where everyone would be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, have changed our society for the better. There is no doubt about that. And they were able to create change not only by harnessing the power of the people through nonviolent protests, but by also utilizing the legal system. Without the skills of African American attorneys, the civil rights movement would not have achieved as much as it did, as quickly as it did. And of course, the most famous of these attorneys would have been Thurgood Marshall, who went on to serve as a justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. Justice Marshall and his colleagues are an inspiration to all of us, but most especially to the generations of African American members of the legal profession who have followed in their footsteps. So many who lived here locally, including our recently departed Justice Robert Duncan. Now, you are probably expecting me to say that Justice Marshall inspired me to pursue a career in the law. The truth is, I lost a bet to the man who was my fiance, a medical student at The Ohio State University. From his perspective, he won the bet because I went to law school. At the time, it was my perspective that I lost the bet because I had to go to law school. So I can't stand here and tell you that I had a childhood dream to become an attorney and a judge. But I can tell you that for a little girl growing up in rural, segregated, red clay Virginia, where there were few Black people in positions of power and influence, it's our ministers and our teachers. Seeing the tremendous change that Dr. King, Justice Marshall, Sister Rosa Parks, and the many other African American leaders involved in the civil rights movement could create was a true revelation to me. It showed me that through hard work, determined effort, and inspired leadership, African Americans could not just influence history, but change its course. That powerful realization bolstered my own dedication to championing diversity and inclusion to ensure that all groups have a seat at the table. It has been a true passion of mine throughout my legal career, and in case you are wondering, I am still an active lawyer. I'm still taking those CLE classes, including one last week. And over the last decade that I have been president and CEO of Your United Way of Central Ohio, I believe we must embrace diversity and include everyone, not just because it is the right thing to do, but because it is the smart thing to do. Our community, our state, and our country face enormous challenges. For example, according to a recent report, the number of people in poverty in Ohio grew almost 58% between 1999 and 2011, although our population in the state only grew by 1.7%. That translates into 1 in 6 Ohioans, or nearly 2 million people, who are living below the poverty level. To tackle issues like that, we need the power that comes from including and benefiting from every diverse viewpoint. We need to tap into the reserves of judgment and wisdom that our many diverse community members possess. And we need to bring everyone together in the decision-making process so that diverse people can interact, learn from each other, and create new solutions. And let me tell you, we need to do this now because huge changes are coming. So right here in Franklin County at this moment, according to the most recent report that I saw, in terms of our local demographics, 71% of the residents are Caucasian. But in a similar report, 47% of preschool children in this county are children of color. As we speak, 47% of children under the age of 5 in this county are children of color. Change, it is a-coming. That means that almost half of our young people are beginning their journey through a community where most of the leaders and professionals do not look like them or share a common background. And if you don't think that makes a difference in the way these children will perceive the world and the opportunities they will have, I can tell you from personal experience that it makes a huge difference. They need to see and interact with people of color, people like them, in positions of honor and influence. And there is no more influential, honorable, and high-profile profession than the law. So all of us, and I do mean all of us, who have learned so much by pursuing legal careers can pay that knowledge forward by ensuring that we seek and nurture a diverse group of attorneys, judges, and yes, even justices. And even though we have made great strides as a society, when it comes to promoting and celebrating diversity, even though we have built on the foundation that a diverse group of leaders laid down, we still have a long, long way to go. Let me tell you what I mean by that. And in honor of today's celebration, I'll focus on African Americans for a moment, although I want to be really, really clear that we need to lift up all diverse people. Research from the Law School Admissions Council indicates that since 2001, only 7% of U.S. law students are Black, compared with 70% of law schools enrolling white students. And since African Americans make up about 13% of the U.S. population, we should have about twice as many Black attorneys. But now I must share something on a personal note. My mother has 6 grandchildren. Of the 6, she has 2 granddaughters. I tell my brother Michael Jackson, and yes, that is his name, no laughter, please, that these are my girls. They were born and raised in Westchester County, New York. They are both graduates of Duke University. The oldest, Nicole, is a proud graduate of Harvard, and baby girl, as I call her, Vanessa, just graduated from Columbia Law School. So as far as I'm concerned, my family's doing what it needs to be doing. And for many of you know me on a very personal note, and I'm not making a prediction because I'm not trying to encourage him to do this, but my son is now 23 years of age, has just graduated from Wittenberg University, the university that brought me to Ohio in the first place, and he's talking about law school. And mom's just saying, "Yeah, maybe you ought to wait a year or two. Let's just see if things get a little better in the profession, but maybe we'll make it 3 out of 6. According to the figures cited by Diversity Inc. magazine, getting back to my not-so-good numbers, only 4% of partners in private practice are people from traditionally underrepresented groups, while in corporate America, only 9.1% of general counsel are people from traditionally underrepresented groups. That lack of representation will continue to have ramifications when it comes to finding qualified candidates for the bench. We can do better than that, and quite frankly, we must do much better. So in honor of a month dedicated to celebrating the many accomplishments of African Americans in the past, we need to ensure that we can create the opportunities necessary for more great achievements in the future. Together, we need to dedicate our efforts to the concrete task of finding qualified candidates with diverse backgrounds and providing the encouragement and mentoring they need to succeed. As I said this before, this is not just the right thing to do, but it is the smart thing to do for our community and our legal system. Because any system of justice that does not adequately reflect the diversity of the constituents it serves will struggle to find harmony with those constituents and with the community as a whole. To this point, I've talked primarily about the stark, are we having a Super Bowl moment? I must admit that after I saw Beyonce, that was the end of the Super Bowl for me. I wasn't particularly interested in either team. I do have a sense of humor. Many people sometimes think that I don't, but you can verify that I do. So as I was saying to this point, I talked primarily about the stark statistics of diversity in the legal profession, but I also want to tell you about my personal journey and the changes I have witnessed during my career. I shared with you that I only applied to George Washington, Georgetown, Temple, and Penn because I thought I was about to be married to a young man who had graduated from The Ohio State University Medical School. I'll just share with you, and it's a story that I especially share with young people, that way back in 1974, when we made this decision that I would apply, when David made the decision that I would apply for law school, it really was because I'd never thought about it, and because when I looked around in my world, I had no role models. I had never personally met an African-American lawyer. I can only remember Thurgood Marshall from television. I had never met a female attorney. Like many of our children today, where do we get our role models? We get them from television. So I see enough gray hair in the room, even if maybe some of it is colored. Go back to 1974. Who did you routinely see on television? I knew that I didn't look like Perry Mason, whose course name was Raymond Burr. So for me to consider going to law school, my dreams weren't big enough. My goals weren't aspirational enough. It truly took this wonderful young man to encourage me to go to law school. I am a graduate of the National Law Center at George Washington University, and I'm going to be honest with you. I hated it. Again, I'm a Southerner. I came from this little community down in Randolph, Virginia, where in my family, I was loved and adored. I went to Wittenberg. I had that same experience. What was your first year of law school like, especially in a big city? But I persevered, primarily because I came back to Columbus between my first and second year and second and third year of law school, and I found this wonderful legal career here. I worked for Billy Joe Brown, I worked for Tony Celebrezzi, and they said to me, "You can do this." I'll tell you, in those early days, 70s and 80s, when one of my first cases that I was just observing was down in MacArthur, Ohio, and everyone looked at me as if I had 3 heads. And when I traveled the byways of Ohio, representing the Attorney General's office, it was tough. I remember when someone called me, and I know who the someone was. It's my dear friend Paula Brooks. Paula called me in November of 1986. I was minding my own business in the Attorney General's office. I was chief of workers' comp. And Paula said, "Janet, there is a vacancy on the Franklin County Municipal Court." And I'm like, "And?" She says, "Well, Governor Celeste," I'm like, "Governor Celeste, the man that I worked so hard working for Billy Joe Brown to defeat in the primary, is interested in changing the makeup of the bench. He's specifically looking for more women and more African Americans, and guess what? He could get 2 in you." I said, "Well, you know, I'm not particularly interested in being someone's kind of martyr." I said, "No, the governor can appoint me to the bench, but in order to stay there, I have to run and win countywide in Franklin County in 1987. The odds didn't look good." And I went to, he's been my mentor since 1977. I spent some time with one Alex Shumate. And Alex says, "Janet," and lots of other people were supportive. He says, "Janet, I think if anyone can do it, you can do it. You're a graduate of Wittenberg University, the National Law Center of George Washington University. And please don't be offended when I say this next thing." He says, "You can out-Republican most Republicans. They'll like you. They'll support you." And that's what happened. And I spent 9 years and 51 weeks in I think one of the greatest courts in the state. And I'll have to share with you that my 10 years there, especially initially, when I had my isms to look at as to which was the most challenging, was it because of my gender? I was sharing chamber space with Deborah Price. Was it my race, 2 of my mentors, Judge Glasgow Pearson? Or was it my age, because I was only 34 and had never set foot into municipal court except for one day before I was appointed? It was an awesome experience. So you can tell that in my career I've done things because other people wanted me to do them. Going to law school, going on the bench. It was a different story for the city attorney's office. I read that Ron O'Brien was going to be running for county prosecutor. And I said, "That's what I want. I want that position." And I will just share with you, without going into details, it wasn't so much a legal battle. It truly was the battle inside of the party, my party. And I had to cut a few deals, especially one with at that time he was city council president, or soon to be president, Michael Coleman. "Janet, if I support you for this position, do you promise you'll stay out of the mayor's race?" I so easily made that promise. A couple of years later, when Greg Leshecka decided not to run again, I decided I was a woman who had to live up to her word, because I'll admit, I wanted to be mayor. And it was there where, once again, I had the pleasure and the privilege of leading the city's law firm and making sure that that office reflected the diversity that this community should have. Hired more women, hired more African Americans and other people of color. And even though I don't like to think about it, I have been told that when the history of Columbus is written and my tenure, I think truly the toughest case in my career. And I've said this to folks, and some of you in the room have this experience. When you're the city attorney and your secretary brings in your mail for the day, and you pull out a complaint, and the complaint reads, the United States of America versus the city of Columbus, I took pause. But certainly that was a case where I learned and I grew, and I so shared. I've taken on the mantle many times of being the first, but one of the things I never want to be is the last. So certainly I've watched the makeup of our judiciary change at different levels of the trial court. And Rick Pfeiffer has been the only person who has followed me, the city attorney's office, but I certainly hope that it will not take as long to have another woman as the city attorney. Let's try even mayor. So as I've shared a little bit of my journey, I'll end today by thanking you once again for the true honor of sharing your Black History Month celebration with me. I hope that you'll take some time to think about what I've said today. I truly believe that embracing inclusion and diversity is not an option, but it's a necessity. And I will say this again. I am not just speaking to the people of color who sit in this room. Each and every one of you has a responsibility to our children. So even though I talked about grooming young folks to go into law school, that doesn't start when they're seniors in college, or even when they're in the 12th grade about to graduate from high school. If you truly want to serve this community, then you will reach out to our youngest citizens. When I was introduced by Chief Justice O'Connor, she alluded to this. Let me make it clearer. I'm blessed to have heroes in my life, but I am infinitely more blessed to have sheroes in my life. And one of them is Marion Wright Edelman. Many people forget that Marion is a lawyer. She was the first African-American female lawyer to pass the bar, I think, in the state of Mississippi, having grown up in South Carolina. And she writes, and they're words that are just emblazoned on my memory. Service is the rent we pay for living on this earth, not something you simply do in your spare time. So I believe very passionately that every effort we can make to promote diversity and inclusion will improve all of our lives, and it will strengthen our community. Thank you for letting me share today.
Thank you, Mayor, for those comments.
A job that I no longer want. Very, very clear about that.
Thank you, Janet, for those thoughtful and challenging remarks. I think this concludes another successful Black History Month celebration, our 5th. We have cookies and punch in the back of the room for those of you who want to stay around, and your supervisors will let you spend that extra 15 minutes talking with each other, which will be liberally granted. So if you will join me one last time in thanking McKenna Hensley, Maya Gordon, and Janet Jackson.